In 2012, a YouTube video was released that quickly went viral, which showcased a 4-year-old boy calling 911. And in his phone call, he was very stressed and very worried because he couldn't get through his math homework. And the dispatch worker reacts kind of in a funny way, and it kind of encourages the boy along. And it's a very funny video. The boy's asking what 16 minus 8 is and what 5 minus 5 is, and eventually later in the video you hear mom in the background screaming, "What are you doing?" And the boy says, "You told me I could call someone and ask for help." And she said, "Not 911. Anyway, it's a funny little video, and at first I found it very charming and entertaining, like obviously a lot of people did, for it to get as many views as it did. But after some contemplation, I was actually a little bothered by what I saw. The little boy is obviously under some very real stress for a 4-year-old. Very concerned, doing math that personally I think should be above his head at 4 years old. But the stress, the anxiety, all those things are very real for him and completely unnecessary. I am a mother of 3 little girls, and my oldest is 6, she's almost 7. And knowing that my children would be most likely in the public school system, I began, while my child was very young, doing a lot of research about education and what was going on currently with education. I did research homeschool and some alternatives to see what was the best fit, but because we live in a good area and the school here was a pretty good school, I decided public school would be the best route to go. So like I said, I researched for years. I am very fascinated by the topic of education. When I come across education related articles in my Facebook newsfeed, I always have to click on them and see what's going on and try to be as informed a parent as I possibly can be. And this has all led me to realize that homework is not only unnecessary for small children, but it's actually detrimental to them and to their progress. Childhood is such an amazing time in life where children are naturally curious. They naturally want to explore the world around them, and they learn through play and exploration while they're out. They want to see the cause and effect of things, and if they're stuck at home, bent over papers, trying to figure out 16 take away 8, they're not out having those experiences that are so fundamental in establishing those early learning processes that they need. So I really believe that anyone who is currently a parent or who wants to be a parent someday, anyone who associates with other parents, could really benefit from understanding how the research and studies have shown that the status quo isn't necessarily the best route, and that there is something that can be done about it and is being done about it. And I hope to share through this talk some of the reasons why people advocate so strongly for homework and how those specific reasons have been disproven over the years as people have really tried to look into the actual effect homework has on children. Now, the first thing I wanted to explore is that some people argue that homework is beneficial because it forces family time and one-on-one parent time. One of the issues with this argument is that many family situations these days consist of single-parent households or homes where both parents have to work. In fact, there was a recent study that was done by Kenny and Ruggers, and in it they found that in the last 2 decades, divorce rates for those over 35 have more than doubled. So you can imagine there are a lot of children out there who are spending only parts of their weeks with one parent and parts of their weeks with another, and that their family time is extremely limited. And I don't believe that homework time is quality family time. Often, from personal experience, it's more fighting time, it's more stress. Children have already been in school all day, and there are better ways that families can be interacting to make their limited time more quality time. Also, many families have more than one child, and it's not good one-on-one time. If you're divided between multiple children, it can be very stressful and frustrating for both the parents and the children. And then lastly, there's been a lot of new teaching methodologies, especially as Common Core has come down, and teachers are trying to teach things in a different way, especially things like math. And then children go home and their parents were taught very differently 20 or 30 years ago, and all they can do when their child is doing homework is try to teach them the way that they've been taught. So children are being taught one thing at school, and then it's being reinforced in a completely different way at home, and it's confusing and ineffective. And for that reason, I don't see that it's very positive family time. Another argument that people have is that homework is necessary for further academic achievement. Now, there are many examples in both the United States and out of the country that show that this is simply not true. In fact, Finland is one of the highest ranked Western countries as far as education goes. And in Finland, they don't even begin formal education until children are age 7. And they have little, if any, homework at all in those early years. William Doyle is a Fulbright scholar and a lecturer on media and education in Finland at a university there. And he said that we really should look to Finland as an example because the children are so effective later in life, and they learn just as much as our children do, but without the enforcement of constant homework and stress. A good example from within the United States was a woman named Christine Hendricks. And she had been a strong advocate for homework, and she was an educator herself. And then her 4th grade daughter began to be so overwhelmed and stressed with the amount of homework she had that she began to rethink her position, and she began doing some research. And her research led her to the same conclusion I had, which is that homework actually doesn't show to have hardly any positive effect on elementary school children. Now, Christine Hendricks was in a unique position because she happened to be the principal of her daughter's school. So that next school year, she gathered all the teachers, and they worked together to figure out a way to limit or eliminate homework as much as possible. And this is outside of reading. They'd still encourage 20 minutes a night of reading. But besides that, and the occasional test preparation, they did get rid of homework. And she said that this is our 2nd year without it, but there have been no backslides in the classroom or in test scores. Parents say their kids enjoy reading again because there's no pressure. And that, in fact, there have been no negative effects whatsoever. And from her personal experience, she said there's a lot less stress in her own home as well. Lastly, a lot of people argue that homework is necessary to teach young children a strong work ethic. And I have found that many students across our country, especially, don't have a home life that's very conducive to learning, and sometimes their lack of homework completion is used to shame them, and that actually impedes their love of school and makes them feel embarrassed, and it makes the whole scholastic experience a lot more difficult for them. There have been studies that show, especially there's someone, Lane and Pearson, and this was an academic study that showed that young children are a lot more prone to being susceptible to their surrounding environments and distractions that exist there. They studied children and older, like middle school age and high school age, and their abilities to focus at home and complete tasks with the same kinds of distractions. I found that young children they can't focus on the tasks, they're not learning as much during homework time, and that their school time is a much more effective time to be focusing on learning. Those children who have more difficult home lives as well, as I mentioned, they end up feeling that they are less intelligent than their classmates because their classmates are praised for completing homework, and often those are the classmates who have the better home lives, who are able to do those things. And so it's a really unfortunate comparison to draw between the two. Young children who are very capable and who could be learning, but who simply don't have the support at home, are potentially being put down a path to believe that they're not as smart or not as good as their classmates. And this makes them hate school at a young age. And this feeling of resentment towards school, towards homework, towards themselves and their abilities to learn lingers with them and carries with them as they grow and as they continue their education. Harrison Cooper, who's a leader in education and in improving education, has suggested, after much study, that the ideal time, if there is going to be homework, is 10 minutes per grade starting in the first grade. So parents can use this to kind of measure how their child's homework stacks. If they're in the third grade and they have more than 30 minutes a night, that's too much, and you can feel completely comfortable approaching the teacher and saying, this is too much for my child. And I really believe that parents and caregivers can have that kind of power, and that they should be advocating for their children. We have the opportunity to be informed and to understand what the recommendations are and what the studies have shown, and to stand up for our children and make sure that their educational experience is the best possible.